Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Chua, and I am sitting here with one of our community members of Roots Rise Yoga. I have known Shona Ganguly for, oh my gosh, how long has it been?
Maybe almost 8 or 9 years.
Wow, a really long time, I think. And well, I'd like to ask her a few questions so that she can share her personal story, not only about her yoga journey, but just a multi-dimensional view of who Shona is. So please welcome Shona.
Thanks.
So Shona, tell us more about yourself. Like, let's start with something I feel like is one of the easiest questions to ask someone is, what do you love? What are your passions?
Passions. There's this Buffy the Vampire Slayer quote that I love and is at the bottom of my emails about how without passion, we wouldn't suffer, I guess, in some ways, but we would be empty inside, and without passion, we'd be truly dead. And so that topic or that word means a lot to me because living life with passion is really critical for me and my and what drives me. And I think the first thing that I'm passionate about is my family and being there for them as much as I can. I'm an imperfect person, most of us are, but I do try. And that's family. The word family is not just about your family of origin. It's the family that you make. It's the family that you choose, your chosen family. So the network of people, the group of people that beyond the ones that birth you or raise you, the ones who come into your life and enhance it in so many different ways. So I'm passionate about all of those people, friends and my mom and my brothers and our dogs and my husband and my just wonderful, wonderful people that I've been able to meet, like Michelle. And those are the people who drive me and inspire me to do the work that I do every day, which is about environmental policy and advocating for not only to protect our natural resources, but to make sure that everybody has access to them and that we're being able to connect with nature. And so I'm really passionate about not just nature itself, but our connection to nature, and we're intrinsically a part of nature, and there's no way to separate ourselves from it. I think a lot of the harm that comes to communities or is done to communities is because of that artificial separation from nature, from water, air, earth, and all of the creatures that surround us. And so I find a lot of passion in those creatures. I mentioned dogs, a great love of dogs since I've had a great love of dogs since I was little. My mom would rescue dachshunds, and we've had lots of different dogs in our families. And my mom always says that new holes in your heart, they don't replace each other, and that love is also a passion. And we've got 2 husky Malamute shepherds who are just over a year, and they're a big part of my passion too. They remind me to stay grounded and to have a sense of humor and to be affectionate and loving, even if the world is difficult. But I think that also leads me to in terms of being grounded, to yoga, another passion. Without yoga, I don't know how I would sort of make it through each day. That it gives me the tools and the serenity and the ability to again be centered and not lose my way and not worry about things that I can't control, things in the future or the past. It helps me stay here in the moment and not grasp the non-striving that you've talked about in class. That's something I try to incorporate into my life every day. And yoga is so many things. It's medicine, it's joy, it's also struggle sometimes to stay with the breath. And Yeah, so those are some of my passions. I have many. I, love to read. I love TV. I love food. Love to cook.
She's a great cook.
I
I
miss
know
cooking
firsthand.
for others. Yeah, so many passions. I mean, I grew up dancing, and I know Michelle and I share that love too of dancing. But I appreciate the opportunity to share my many passions. I don't always think about the multiplicity of my passions.
Mm, thank you. And let's go into your yoga journey a bit since you mentioned that. When did you start practicing and how did you start practicing? Like what drew you in the first place?
I don't know if I fully remember like the initial point. Did I did take yoga classes in high school through the 24-hour fitness gym, and and then when I went to college at Berkeley, I started a more sort of rigorous or consistent yoga practice, and would take classes there more regularly, and they really helped me with the stress of an undergraduate program, and I was pretty intense. I was doing two majors. I did everything. I was in a club that I eventually became president of. It was just, I've always filled my life with too much, and yoga is a way to find balance. And so I found a lot of relief in the yoga practice there. But if we're going back to what drew me to yoga, why I'm in this, I was thinking about this today when speaking with a friend. My mom used to teach me meditation when I was young because I would get angry. I was very volatile, and for various reasons when I was very young. And she would have me sit and close my eyes and imagine the light inside and meditate that way, which has resonated to this day. That ability to sit and find, do this visualization practice and be calm, be centered, and be with my breath. And so yoga is this natural extension or part of that practice. So I was always constantly drawn back to yoga, even when maybe I would go back to a gym practice or dance. Yoga was the sort of the practice that would always draw me back because it provided this serenity, this internal calm and peace that nothing else really does. And so once I was in graduate school, I again developed a more consistent practice. But really, when I started working, and that's when, when I started my career in conservation, and I met Michelle, is when my practice, there was no interruption in my practice. It was this consistent thing that had to be a part of my daily life or my weekly life, depending on the crazy schedule. But it was always there, and now I can't imagine going back to a point where it won't be a part of my life. That it's something that I feel like I prioritize, no matter what's going on in my life.
Well, you also have some life changes coming up or that are happening now. You're expecting in a few months.
Yeah,
How far along are you again right now?
I'm a 25 and a half weeks. Yeah, expecting a little boy in May. And yeah, I'm maintaining the yoga practice during this pregnancy, which has been, it's my first. It's very nerve-wracking during, the pandemic. It's also just nerve-wracking as a first time, mom, not and trying that and be healthy and cultivate a mindfulness practice that will help with the birth and the delivery, and just coping with all the changes in the body, the hormones. So I've prioritized yoga during that time, and it's really helped me to be in tune with my body, to understand how my mind is impacting my body, and how important it is to come back to the breath and to be in the moment and not anticipate. I was reading something in mindful birthing about how I think we're going to forget the quote exactly, but how expectation is like suffering and waiting or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that if I have expectations, or if I think too much about the future, that's when the anxiety gets me, or the worry, or, running through scenarios, which is unnecessary, because whatever will happen, and I have to handle it in that moment. But this time will never come again. No time ever comes again. And so it's so important to appreciate and be in this moment, which is constantly moving. So it's not stagnant. You're not in this moment and then you're stuck in that moment. The moment keeps going forward, and you have to go forward with it. Not to have this sort of teleological end point where it starts here and it goes there. It's just that you're going with it wherever it ends up going. Not that we're passengers, but that we can observe that and stop trying to control. And again, the non-striving is so important there. And I've learned so much of that from you and from the practice. And now to be able to apply it to this transformational experience, that although it's so common in the world, none of us would be here without this process. It does feel like every time is the first time, and that this is it's new and different, because each woman is different, each body is different, each mind is different. And I think the other part of the yoga practice is and the mindfulness practice is, it gives you permission to not be so hard on yourself, and to not put pressure, and to just be in that moment, to experience and appreciate that this little being who's growing inside of me this is the only time he's going to be doing that. And so it's important to do that and not anticipate when he's going to be in the world as a full-formed human, because those times will hopefully come, and safely and fully. But right now, this time is unique. And so I've learned that from this practice as well.
Wow. So well said. It's such a profound yet simple concept that we can overlook in the midst of, like, I have to get things done or I have goals, or I can't let go of this past. We talk so much about that aparigraha, that non-attachment, and that ability to surrender to flow. I find it interesting that you talked about starting your yoga practice in college, when you were going to high school or college? 24-hour fitness. High school. But it sounds like you started as a child, passed from your mom teaching you meditation. Where did your mom learn the practice?
Oh, I'm not sure. My mom is a poet and an all around just fascinating person who's had a myriad of life experiences. I mean, she's from Kolkata in India, and yoga is obviously from India, and integrated into the culture. My mom, I don't think, took yoga classes or anything like that, but it's so a part of the culture that I'm sure meditation came from that. For her, there's a sense of spirituality even in I'm not a particularly religious person, but I identify as Hindu, and it's very much a spiritual practice for me and my family. It's not about belief in deities as much as it is about living a balanced life and being a good person, doing good, and doing your best to be good, because like I said, we're imperfect people, but we can always try. But the other piece that resonated is this non-attachment. In the Veda, well, in the Vedas there's some of this, but in the Bhagavad Gita, in this that conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, that's very famous. There's a talk about the stages of life, and I might be getting the exact part in there wrong. I do have an undergraduate degree in South Asian studies, but my memory sometimes is a little off when you work on environment all day long. But basically there are stages of life, and there are stages when you're growing up, and then when you're raising family, and when your children go away, and then there's this part of your life when you kind of become an ascetic, go into the forest. This is I'm really paraphrasing, but the non-attachment really came up in the Bhagavad Gita at the end, when at the end of your life. But I think the yogic practice, which predates the Gita, or because the Yoga Sutras probably predate it, but the idea of non-attachment also reduces suffering. And that non-attachment doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean that you don't have passion. It means that you're not, again, grasping and striving. And that in Hinduism, while not pervasive necessarily, everybody practices differently. I think that concept that this is Maya, this is Mahamaya, the grand illusion, that nothing really is necessarily is real the way we define it. That doesn't mean that you can't feel this table, or that you can't smell those flowers. It just means that if you acknowledge that there is illusion, that your mind projects things. Even I think you'll find on the philosophical world, in the science world, our minds fill in a lot. Our brains do a lot of work to fill in images and thoughts, and our thoughts project things. And so if we acknowledge that we're all experiencing different realities, even if some folks believe in absolute universal truth, nobody's experiencing that truth exactly the same way. My husband Johnny likes to say that he works a lot on translation, and how we're always translating. There's never a direct communication, and that's a sign that, like, look, this universal truth, as much as we might believe it's there, is almost impossible to communicate directly in the same way. And similarly, he talks about, I see this color as pink, you will see it as fuchsia, and you might actually perceive the color differently than I do. So we're viewing the world and the universe in different ways, and experiencing it in different ways. And there's nothing really wrong with that. But I think the idea that I have to be attached to the idea to that, like pink or fuchsia, causes me suffering, because I have to argue with you that, no, this is pink, and you have to say it's fuchsia. So it's a very it can be really freeing, actually, to practice non-attachment, even if you're not in that stage of life according to the Hindu text necessarily. But always it's about which text are you reading, and what are you taking away from it. And we have to contextualize these things in the present. We're not living 5,000 years in the past, and we're living in this time with technology and globalization, and a lot of both positive, negative, neutral, and other things. And so how do we negotiate and manage that using these philosophical practices that have persisted for so long, but are still so useful, and not in a utilitarian way, just in a way that we can find peace in them in a time that's really fraught with not just violence, but difficulty and struggle and inequality and inequities and so many problems that are overwhelming. I mean, I deal with a lot of these on a daily basis, and I feel them in my body, but then I have to remember that it's so important to let that go, not because it doesn't affect me and I have privilege, of course I do, but because if I don't, then I can't do the good work. I can't advocate. I can't move forward. And that's more important, to not be debilitated by all of the terrible things that are happening, and not to like erase them and be like, oh, only focus on the positive, but using that positive to fuel the change for good.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for that. I don't want to keep you too much longer. You've said such beautiful things that I hope that people watching can resonate with. What's one last takeaway that you might want to share? Let's say for an expectant mother like you, that you, an application of yoga. Let's be kind of more specific. I mean, you talked about expectation and the non-attachment as well. But how about I don't know where you like to go with it, whether it's about maintaining the yoga practice, like a tip for doing that, especially when you're pregnant, um, or having such a busy life and fitting it in and, making it doable, wherever you want to go with it. What are some last words from you?
I think those are all good. I feel like making space where you can make it is important, and not judging yourself. That's the one thing from yoga that I also try to remember, is that when you come to the mat or when you're in the world, there's a lot of self-judgment, and I'm one of those people, um and not just self-judgment, others will judge, especially a pregnant woman. There's a lot of fear mongering, there's a lot of projections onto what we should be doing or how we should be, and yoga gives you the freedom and the space to sit with yourself and do what feels right for you,
Mm.
not what everybody's advising you to do and telling you to do, and all that anxiety. I mean, maybe not every pregnant woman feels anxiety. Every woman will feel it differently, but that's part of the point, that people will try to tell you, oh, beware of this, watch out for this, read this book, do this thing. If you already have a yoga practice, you have a way to kind of detach from all of that, and to not let that anxiety overwhelm, because there are already going to be so many changes, there's already so much going on, and as I said, everybody experiences it differently. But what yoga provides is a coping mechanism to handle that change, and to feel, to experience it, and enjoy it in a way, and give your body, I don't know the right word, but a sense of grace. that
Mm.
that you don't have to judge, oh, well, my belly's not like her belly, and well, how come I can't do this anymore. It's the non-attachment, the non-judgment in the practice, it's built in. So
Mm.
the same as I've done ballet most of my life. It's not the same as like my arabesque isn't so high anymore. It doesn't matter in your yoga practice. What matters is that you continue that union
Mm.
of movement, whatever that breathing movement is. Even if, as Michelle has said in class, even if you're just sitting and breathing, or you have props all around you and breathing, you're doing it. That's yoga.
Mm.
And so the I would also say that the physical element of the practice helps in so many ways to deal with a lot of the symptoms and the difficulties that come in the body, and awareness, which is really important. And the final thing I'll say is just to not allow the thoughts to dominate, to really let go of those of the thoughts, to be able to find that space where you're not grasping at them, where you're not trying to understand them. And even if your mind is racing, which sometimes mine does, most of our minds race at times or have lots of thoughts, we're not those thoughts. And yoga and meditation and this practice, mindfulness practice, reminds you that you can have a friend that I was talking to said this, and I don't know where it came from, but where he got it from, but your mind can be an ally. That instead of sort of going on this roller coaster ride of anxiety and emotions, not that emotions are bad, but these anxious emotions and the nervousness, that instead of following that, you can find that center and calm that you will likely need when you give birth, and then when you have a child and have to raise a child. They're the equanimity that we all need to just be in this world. Yoga provides, and so those are my sort of final thoughts. But the other thing about yoga is there is no final. There's everything is it all comes back. And so I always look forward to the next class that Michelle you will teach, and I appreciate your energy and your loving spirit, and how what that brings to my practice and the practice of our community, and the fact that you've created a community in a time when it is very difficult to create one, when there's so much Zoom fatigue. So thank you so much, and thank you for having me here. I
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, talk about Zoom fatigue. You tell me that your job is all about Zoom, and then you go to Zoom yoga
It feels
afterwards.
different.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's Shona. Would you please pronounce your last name to make sure I was saying it right?
Ganguly?
Ganguly. Oh, Shona Ganguly. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your
Thanks.
energy and thanks for your wise words.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate the space.